Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiv Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistike. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Satsvarup Das Goswami, Volume 1, A Lifetime in Preparation, India 1896 to 1965. Chapter 11, The Dream Come True. So Prabhupada is in Delhi and he just put in an order of printing Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first volume, 2 chapters. So now he'll be running around to sell his own books. No help at all. Bhaktivedanta Swami went out alone to sell his books and present them to important people. Dr. Radhakrishnan, who gave him a personal audience, agreed to read the book and write his opinion. Hanuman Prasad Poddar was the first to write a favorable review. And he wrote, "It's a source of great pleasure for me that a long cherished dream has materialized and is going to be materialized with this and the would-be publications. I thank the Lord that due to his grace, this publication could see the light." Bhaktivedanta Swami went to the major libraries, universities, and schools in Delhi, where the librarians found him calm and quiet, noble, polite, scholarly, with a specific glow in him. Traveling on foot, he visited school administration offices throughout Delhi and placed copies in more than 40 schools in Delhi area. The Ministry of Education, which had previously denied him assistance, placed an order for 50 copies for selected university and institutional libraries throughout India. The ministry paid him 600 rupees plus packing and postage charges, and Bhaktivedanta Swami mailed the books to the designated libraries. The US Embassy purchased 18 copies to be distributed in America through the Library of Congress. The institutional sales were brisk, but then the sales slowed. As the only agent, Bhaktivedanta Swami was now spending hours just to sell a few copies. He was eager to print the second volume, yet until enough money came from the first, he could not print. In the meantime, he continued translating and writing purports. Writing so many volumes was a huge task that would take many years. And at his present rate, with sales so slow, he would not be able to complete the work in this lifetime. Although there were many who took part in the production of the book and still others who became customers, only Bhaktivedanta Swami deeply experienced the successes and failures of the venture. It was his project and he was responsible. No one was eager to see him writing prolifically, and no one demanded that it be printed. Even when the sales slowed to a trickle, the managers of OK Press were not distressed. They would give him the balance of his books only when he paid for them. And since it was also he who had the burden of hiring OK Press to print a second volume, the pressure was on him to go out and sell as many copies of the first volume as possible. For Hanuman Prasad Poddar, the volume had been something to admire in passing. For Hitsaran Sharma, it had been something he had tended to after his day's work for Mr. Dalmia. For the boy who lived at Chippiwada, the book had meant a few errands. For the paper dealers, it had meant a small order. For Dr. Radhakrishnan, it had been but the slightest, soon forgotten matter in a life crammed with national politics and Hindu philosophizing. But Bhaktivedanta Swami, by his full engagement in producing this Bhagavatam, felt bliss and assurance that Krishna was pleased. He did not, however, intend for the Bhagavatam to be his private affair. It was a sorely needed medicine for the ills of Kali Yuga, and it was not possible for only one man to administer it. Yet he was alone and he felt exclusive pleasure and satisfaction in serving his Guru and Lord Krishna. Thus his transcendental frustration and pleasure mingled, his will strengthened, and he continued alone. His spiritual master, the previous spiritual masters, and the Vedic scriptures all assured him that he was right. If, if a person got a copy of the Bhagavatam and read even one page, he might decide to take part in Lord Chaitanya's movement. If a person seriously read the book, he would be convinced about spiritual life. The more this book could be distributed, the more the people could understand Krishna consciousness. And if they understood Krishna consciousness, they would become liberated from all problems. Book selling was real preaching. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had wanted it, even at the neglect of constructing temples or making followers. Who could preach as well as Srimad Bhagavatam? Certainly, whoever spent 16 rupees for a book would also take the time at least to look at it. In the months that followed, Bhaktivedanta Swami received more favorable reviews. The prestigious Adyar Library Bulletin gave a full review, noting the editor's vast and deep study of the subject and concluding further volumes of this publication are eagerly awaited. His scholarly godbrothers also wrote their appreciation. Swami Ban Maharaj, rector of the Institute of Oriental Philosophy in Vrindavan, wrote, "I have nothing but admiration for your bold and practical venture. If you should be able to complete the whole work, you will render a very great service to the cause of Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the country also. Do it and rest assured there will be no scarcity of resources." Bhakti Sarang Maharaj wrote a full review in his Sajjan Toshni. We expect that this particular English version of Srimad Bhagavatam will be widely read, and thereby spiritual poverty of people in general may be removed forever. At a time when we need it very greatly, Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami has given us the right thing. We recommend this publication for everyone's serious study. Shri Vishwanath Das, Governor of Uttar Pradesh, recommended the volume to all thoughtful people, and Economic Review praised the author for attempting a tremendous task. At a time when not only the people of India but also the West need the chastening quality of love and truth in the corrupting atmosphere of hate and hypocrisy, a work like this will have uplifting and corrective influence. Dr. Zakir Hussain, Vice President of India, wrote, "I have read your book, Srimad Bhagavatam, with great interest and much profit. I thank you again for the kind thought which must have prompted you to present it to me." The favorable reviews, although Bhaktivedanta Swami could not pay the printer with them, indicated a serious response. The book was valuable, and subsequent volumes would earn the series even more respect. By Krishna's grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami had already completed many of the translations and purports for Volume 2. Even in the last weeks of printing the first volume, he had been writing day and night for the second volume. It was glorification of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and therefore it would require many, many volumes. He felt impelled to praise Krishna and describe him in more and more volumes. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had said that the presses of the world could not print fast enough the glories of Krishna and the spiritual world that were being received at every moment by pure devotees. Bhaktivedanta Swami decided to return to Vrindavan for several months of intensive writing on Volume 2. This was his real business at Radha Damodar temple. Vrindavan was the best place for writing transcendental literature that had already been demonstrated by the Vaishnava Acharyas of the past. Living in simple ease, taking little rest and food, he continually translated the verses and composed his Bhaktivedanta purports for Volume 2. After a few months, after amassing enough manuscript pages, he would return to Delhi and once again enter the world of publishing. In Volume 1, he had covered the first 6.5 chapters of the first canto. The second volume began on page 365 with the 8th verse of 7th chapter. Bhaktivedanta Swami wrote in his purport that the Srimad Bhagavatam was meant for Paramhamsas, persons engaged purely in self-realization. Yet, he wrote, it works into the depth of the heart of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in the matter of sense gratification, but even such men also find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Bhaktivedanta Swami returned to Delhi to raise funds for printing Volume 2. When he visited a prospective donor, he would show the man Volume 1 and the growing collection of reviews, explaining that he was asking a donation not to support himself, but to print this important literature. Although for the first volume he had received no donations equal to the 4,000 rupees he had received from Mr. Poddar, an executive in the LNH sugar factory gave a donation of 5,000 rupees for volume 2. Bhaktivedanta Swami had been dissatisfied with Hitsaran Sharma as a production supervisor. Although supposedly an expert in the trade, Hitsaran had caused delays, and sometimes he had advised Gautam Sharma without consulting Bhaktivedanta Swami. The work on volume 1 had slowed and even stalled when a job from a cash customer had come up, and Bhaktivedanta Swami had complained that it was Hitsaran's fault for not giving money to OK Press on time. For volume 2, Bhaktivedanta Swami decided to deal directly with OK Press and supervise the printing himself. He spoke to Gautam Sharma and offered a partial payment. Although the majority of the copies of volume 1 was still standing on the printing floor, Bhaktivedanta Swami wanted OK Press to begin volume 2. Gautam Sharma accepted the job. We can only imagine the sufferings that he was going through and the ordeal to get these books printed. It was early in 1964 when volume 2 went to press, following the same steps as volume 1. But this time Bhaktivedanta Swami was more actively present, pushing. And in 1964, he was already 68 years old. That is old to do all these things. To avoid delays, he purchased the paper himself at Siddho Mal and Sons paper merchants in the heart of the paper district. He would choose and order his paper and then arrange to transport it to OK Press. If the order was a large one, he would have it carried by cart. Smaller orders he would send by rickshaw or on the head of a bearer. In his preface to the second volume, Bhaktivedanta Swami expressed the apparent oddity of working in Delhi while living in Vrindavan. The path of fruitive activities, that is to say, the path of earn money and enjoy life, as it is going on generally, appears to have become also our profession, although we have renounced the order of worldly life. They see that we are moving in the cities, in the government offices, banks, and other business places for promoting the publication of Srimad Bhagavatam. They also see that we are moving in the press paper market and amongst the book binders, also away from our residence at Vrindavan. And thus they conclude sometimes mistakenly that we are also doing the same business in the dress of a mendicant. But actually there is a gulf of difference between the two kinds of activities. This is not a business for maintaining an establishment of material enjoyment. On the contrary, it is an humble attempt to broadcast the glories of the Lord at a time when the people need it very badly. He went on to describe how in former days, even 50 years ago, well-to-do members of society had commissioned pundits to print or handwrite the Bhagavatam, and then distribute copies amongst the devotees and the general people. But the times have changed. At the present moment, the time is so changed that we had to request one of the biggest industrialists of India to purchase 100 copies and distribute them, but the poor fellow expressed his inability. We wish that somebody may come forward to pay for the actual cost of publication of the Srimad Bhagavatam and let them be distributed free to all the leading gentlemen of the world. But nobody is so far prepared to do so, do this social uplifting work. So after thanking the Ministry of Education and the Director of Education for distributing copies to institutions and libraries, Bhaktivedanta Swami again stated his predicament before his reading public. The problem is that we must get some money for completing the work, which is admittedly a mighty project. The sales proceeds are being employed in the promotional work and not in sense gratification. Herein lies a difference from the fruitive activities. And for all this, we have to approach everyone concerned, just like a businessman. There is no harm to become a businessman if it is done on account of the Lord, as much as there was no harm to become a violent warrior like Arjuna or Hanumanji, if such belligerent activities are executed to satisfy the desires of the Supreme Lord. So even though we are not in the Himalayas, even though we talk of business, even though we deal in rupees and paisa, still simply because we are 100% servants of the Lord and are engaged in the service of broadcasting the message of His glory, certainly we shall transcend and get through the invincible impasse of Maya and reach the effulgent kingdom of God to render Him face to face eternal service in full bliss and knowledge. We are confident of this factual position when we may also assure to our numerous readers that they will also achieve the same result simply by hearing the glories of the Lord. So Prabhupada's conviction is based on Bhagavatam and other scriptures. And see how he is saying that even though we are engaged in his work like a businessman, but we are still different on a different platform. People can see it this way, but the consciousness is completely different. So same thing is true for devotees who have jobs or businesses, but the consciousness is different. And that is what we have to maintain. Just like Prabhupada gave example of Arjun. Arjun, he fought the war, killed so many people, but still considered great devotee of the Lord, based on his consciousness and his service mode to satisfy Krishna. On receipt of the first copies of second volume, another 400-page cloth-bound, brick-colored Srimad Bhagavatam with the same dust jackets as volume 1, Bhaktivedanta Swami made the rounds of the institutions of scholars, politicians, and booksellers. One Delhi bookseller, Dr. Manohar Lal Jain, had particular success in selling the volumes. Manohar Lal Jain said, he would come to me for selling his books. He would often come and he used to chat with me for 1 to 2 hours. He had no other business except selling his books as much as possible. We would discuss the difficulties he was having and also many other things, yoga, Vedanta, and the religious aspects of life. His problem was distributing his work because it was a big publication. He had planned to publish it in many volumes. Naturally, I told him it was not possible for any individual bookseller or publisher here to publish it and invest money in it. So that was a little bit of a disappointment for him because he could not bring out more volumes. But my sales were good because this was the best translation, Sanskrit text with English translations. No other such edition was available. I sold about 150 to 200 copies in about 2 or 3 years. The price was very little, only 16 rupees. He had published his reviews and he had a good market. The price was reasonable and he was not interested in making money out of it. He was printing in English for the foreigners. He had a good command of Sanskrit as well as English. When we met, we would speak in English and his English was very impressive. He wanted me to publish, but I didn't have any presses or no finances. I told him frankly, I won't be able to publish it, but because it was not 1 or 2 volumes, but many. But he managed anyhow. I refer to him to Atmaram and Sons. He also used to go there. He was a great master, a philosopher, a great scholar. I used to enjoy the talks. He used to sit with me for 1 to 2 hours, as much as he could afford. Sometimes he would come in the morning, 11 or 12, and then sometimes in the afternoon. He used to come in for money. How many copies are sold? So I would pay him. Practically, he was not doing very well with finances at that time. He only wanted that his books should be sold to every library and everywhere where the people are interested in it. We used to publish a catalog every month, and I would advertise his book. Orders would be coming from all over the world. So, at least for me, the sales were picking up. If I sold 100 copies of the first volume, then I figured the second volume would be sold in the same number naturally. But definitely, those who would take the first volume would also take volume two because it was institution, and the institutions will always try to complete their set. He used to discuss with me how the volumes can be brought out and how many it would take to complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was very much interested in bringing out the whole series. See how enthusiastic he was that yes, Srimad Bhagavatam can bring about the real change in the life of people suffering in the material world. And how hard he was working just to do that. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, you all have safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna.